Hey everyone, Adam Tracy, and I want to talk about how to get a crypto exchange launched in 2026. And so this is part one of a series. Let's tackle three fundamental questions that you need to answer before you even think about doing this. Number one, are you going to launch a custodial or non-custodial exchange, right? And it used to be that your non-custodial exchanges were just basically decentralized exchanges, but that's not the case. You see a lot of non-custodial exchanges that have centralized trading engines and operate like your largest crypto exchanges. And with custody comes not only the necessity to partner with a custodian or become a custodian, but there's also a great deal of liability that stakes with it because you are effectively a fiduciary of your customers' crypto and or funds. So there's a lot more that goes into it. Banking risk is a lot higher and the like. But obviously the custodial exchanges tend to be more prevalent, tend to be more popular. It's easier to sell. People aren't so keen to connect wallets as they are to not. So it's a choice. It depends on what you're trading. The decentralized market is always typically going to be non-custodial, but it's also going to impact regulation and how you're regulated, which I'll come to in a second. So that second part is how you wish to be regulated or not regulated. In many parts of the world, a non-custodial decentralized exchange is not regulated. And that's not because really for any other reason, but for the laws not catching up to them, right? And you can see those exchanges throughout various offshore jurisdictions in particular, and those can work, but you're really doing non-custodial DEX. That's really all that's going to fly in 2026, and to the extent that you need banking, which you probably don't, it's going to be very difficult to do. The middle ground is the sort of white label exchange model, which is becoming far more popular, where you are effectively relying upon the license or licenses of another exchange to offer your centralized exchange services. Now, the issue with that, as what I've seen, is that the market's kind of crowded, but the margins are exceptionally low. And so you can effectively create these white label exchanges with very minimal effort and time, but at the end of the day, you have to scale those to amount very fast to really make it worth your while. Now, branding being what it is and brand equity being what it is, if that's the way you want to go with a minimal investment, accept the fact that you're going to lose money or break even for some period of time, build that equity, and then become licensed and assume that those customers are going to come with you into the newly licensed entity, which most would, then it makes sense. And finally, you have the just, I'm going to get licensed, straight up licensing play. And I work in obtaining licenses in almost 30 jurisdictions at this point, and it really varies. And like I always say, where you get licensed initially isn't where you necessarily stop. You see Coinbase, they get every crypto license they can. They don't need it. It's all optics and window dressing. So that's not the model to follow. But for a newly minted exchange, do you look at a lower tier, for lack of a better term, like someplace offshore where there's a lower investment, where you can scale and you can build that kind of equity, you can build that customer base and either look to expand into the EU or US or just look to get purchased, right? Get bought out. Because the holy grail is obviously the US, but it's also the most complicated and time-consuming and really expensive license to get. And while the money transmission licenses in the US that you need to run an exchange aren't actually, they don't impart a significant capability and financial wherewithal quotient on the promoters. It's just a lot of paperwork and back and forth to do it 50 times. Whereas in the EU under MiCA, it's a little bit different. There's a little more emphasis on your ability to run an exchange, but it's not as long. And you're only dealing with one regulator, which gives you access to the entirety of the EU. And if you are right out of the gate in 2026, and unless you are venture-backed or have significant experience and you're well heeled from some other exchange or crypto project, you're not necessarily going to go to a Malta, Gibraltar, and be able to easily get the license. Bermuda is a really great middle ground because they will work with you if you have some financial wherewithal, but not a ton of crypto experience. And that license is not terribly expensive, right? To either get or maintain. It's pretty quick. That would be my choice. But again, it all depends on what you want to do. But again, Bermuda isn't giving you the United States. So you have to look at it from a larger strategy as to how I'm going to do this. And even if you're going the middle model of white label thing, which you can say, oh, well, I get the US right away. Well, sure you do, right? But you still have to register as an MSB. Canada, you still have to register with fintech. There are actual licenses that you need, right, to even do a white label, right? Now, they're not necessarily money transmission licenses in the US, depending on the services you want to offer, but they are there. So it's not just this, where you don't have to do anything. And obviously, MSB registration brings with it AML KYC regulation, which is cost, and we know how that goes. So that's point 1 and 2 and 3. And once you've decided on, model, right, and where to get license, okay, when you can start looking at, 1, the licensing process, which I'll talk about in the next video, but 2, which is really the struggle, and it's really, especially when you talk about offshore licensing, it's much harder to find the financial institution partners that you need to actually operate an exchange, especially a centralized exchange, right? And so that, to me, as a practitioner, that's actually far more difficult than getting the license. I know I'm going to get the license, right? Because I know I can just shuffle the same documentation they need, business plan and stuff, in front of them. Eventually, it'll come. But getting not only banking and payment rails and custody and all those things, adequate banking, payment rails, custody, that is a huge challenge. So that's what I'll talk about in my next video on how to launch a crypto exchange in 2026. Adam Tracy, you know where to find me. I'll talk to you next time. Cheers.